Hi everyone, I'm Michael Uriarty, or Dr. Mike, and welcome to Technique Talk, the MYK System, and more. This is episode 6 in our series of comparing and contrasting other techniques with the MYK system. Today, we're going to talk about Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique, or BEST. I think I'm only going to say best from now on if I can. That's a lot easier. All right, if you want more information on either technique, I have the website links in the description below. Whether you're a patient looking for help or a practitioner looking for a good technique to learn, this series is what you need. Let's dive in. How did the BEST technique start? Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique, or BEST, was developed by Milton Theodore Morter, Jr. But everybody just called him Ted. He was born in 1935 in Akron, Ohio. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Science from Kent State. Thankfully, he graduated in the late 50s. He wasn't at Kent State during the Vietnam War protests of 1970. For you youngsters out there, they call that the May 4th Massacre, or the Kent State Massacre. They even made a movie in 1981 called Kent State. I'll save you about an hour and a half. Basically, there were a bunch of students yelling, "We don't want to go to Vietnam!" And the government sent the National Guard over to calm the situation down. And they told the students, they said, "Listen, you guys be quiet or we're going to shoot you." And so, students, being students, they weren't quiet. So they shot 4 of them. Now, there was a lot of talking and stuff during the hour and a half movie, but that's pretty much the gist of it. I just saved you some time. Okay, so Ted, luckily, wasn't there. He went on to get his Master's of Science from Ohio State University, which is now called the Ohio State University. I visited there once and I found out how important it is to use the word the. Ted continued in school, got his Doctor of Chiropractic degree from Logan College in St. Louis. He later became the president of Logan College and then the president of Parker College down in Dallas. So, in 1975, he introduced, they're not saying that he developed this in 1975, they're saying that he introduced this in 1975. Now, it got its name from the fact that it is applied to biological systems expressing energy exchange with the environment. Okay. It says the theoretical basis of BEST is linked to several disciplines, including physiology, nutrition, physics, psychology, chiropractic, and acupuncture. As we go through the explanation, you're going to see parts of these disciplines in the theory and the philosophy and also in the treatment. Now, Dr. Morter died in 2013. Every time I see the name Morter, I want to say Mortimer, and I just did it. So if I accidentally say it, now you're going to know why, because everybody knows Mortimer, right? Everybody knows who that is. Now maybe there's a lot of famous Mortimers out there, but the most famous Mortimer was Mortimer the Mouse, Minnie's ex-boyfriend. He's basically the complete opposite of Mickey. Now, you can't blame Minnie. She was young, she was rebelling and kind of going after the bad boy type. Wanting to say that I was the one who tamed him. Now, in the end, she did the right thing. She went with Mickey, the good guy. And now they're stupid rich living down in Florida. Okay, so speaking of good guys, let me tell you another piece of how I developed the MYK system. We had a lot of our patients tell us that they didn't have an hour to get a massage. They didn't want to get undressed. They didn't want to get oils and creams put on them and then have to go back to work. So we wanted to come up with something that would combat each one of these. With each MYK treatment, they last anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes, depending on the nerve level that you're going to treat. The person stays fully clothed, and we don't use any oils or creams. Now, again, I'm going to piece the entire story out to you in different videos, or you can get the entire story all at one time just by taking a class. So check out our website and look at our class schedule. All right, let's jump into this information. What is the theory and philosophy of BEST? So here's how they describe it. BEST is an expanded concept in healthcare, practiced as a non-force procedure that addresses the spine or total body by way of proper physiological input and integration of the sensory system, allowing for appropriate transmission of neurological information through the process of homeostasis. Okay, so if you've been following this series, you know I'm gonna reword that, right? I'm not gonna let that just sit out there and have us try and figure that out. Okay, so it's a non-force technique for the entire body. We're gonna physically touch the body at certain points, and I'm sure there's gonna be a combination of points. Where you get touched is putting information into the sensory system. So we want this information to travel up through the nervous system and help bring the body back into balance. That's a little easier to follow, I think, saying it that way. I found 2 other websites of practitioners that do this technique, and I've kind of merged what they said, and these definitions go into a little bit more detail. So unresolved emotional issues will show up in the body as patterns. These patterns can be tight muscles, dysfunctional organs, stress, etc. The treatment is done by applying pressure to specific points on the head and the body, while the patient recalls stressful memories. The goal is to manipulate the body's energy in a way that will bring about a healthy rewiring of the brain. Then, as mental issues are resolved, the brain stops sending unhealthy signals to the body. The end result is reduced pain and improved function. Okay, that was one. Here's another. So the theory behind this is that the mind and body use energy according to the person's thoughts. Their belief is that the supply of energy is limited and that old stresses use up bandwidth in this system. When this excess energy usage is turned off, then the system regains full bandwidth and can move the new energy to doing positive things such as healing. Okay, now I get the aspect of putting a stimulation into the body and having the information travel up to the brain. They get into the emotional side of it, saying that you should think of an emotional trauma or some emotional thing that happened to you. And if you can clear the point as you're thinking of the trauma, the body will release that emotional trauma and balance itself and function better. That's my understanding of what they're saying. With the MYK system, we also put a stimulation into the body. We do everything along one nerve pathway, so everything on one pathway sends a signal up to the brain saying, hey, something happened here. And the brain takes this information, and when the person stands up, because no treatment in the MYK system is complete until the person stands up to gravity, so when the person stands up, the brain says, wow, all these muscles had a change. Now all these other muscles that we never even touched have to contract or relax based on that change. And you can see postures balance almost immediately. And when this happens, pain goes down and range of motion goes up. Now, that explanation is keeping it in a broad overview and not getting deep into the weeds on, what the MYK system is doing. What do they say it helps? There's a paper that was published by Dr. Morter in 1996 talking about the rationale and evidence on the technique. He gets very detailed. And in my opinion, this would be considered on the edges, on the fringes of healthcare. So we're dealing with cell-to-cell communication. Nothing weird about that. All right. Then we get into the energy field that is both inside and outside the body. And he talks about the aura. He gives an example. If the abdomen becomes energy deficient, the body will divert energy from the mental or the emotional fields to help balance that out. If things get out of whack like this, it'll disrupt the pulsation synchronization of the body. For example, he says the heart, the lung, and the stomach each oscillate at different frequencies. They will either be in sync or out of sync, and this can be heard as a beat or seen as a pulse. This is some deep thought process stuff to try and wrap your brain around. This article that I'm getting this from is 47 pages long, and it's dense. It is dense in how it's written, and I'm trying to bring this into some easier verbiage, but my goodness, my brain is getting tired because I'm having to do some mental gymnastics with this material. Okay. He then talks about biomagnetism and how the body's magnetic orientation and field strength are altered during periods of stress. So we get into some clinical information, and he talks about the hands having a magnetic north and south polarization, just like a magnet. If you put two souths or two norths together, they're going to repel. But if you put a north and a south together, they're going to come together and join. He says on the right hand, the middle finger and the pinky finger are north seeking, and the index and the ring finger are south seeking. On the left hand, it's just the opposite. The middle finger and the pinky finger are south seeking, and the index and the ring fingers are north seeking. He says if a practitioner places a north digit on a south segmented area of the body, there will be an energy transfer from the practitioner to the patient. The practitioner will feel drained, while the patient will feel rejuvenated. So what you want to do is take a north finger and put it on a north point on the body, and this will push the energy back into the body and break up the biomagnetic segmentation. I told ya! Now, we're getting on the edges or the fringes of treatment. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen. I'm just acknowledging where we are. Kind of over here on the edge. Okay. I had to cover that information to get to the objective, what BEST is trying to do and what it treats. It wants to remove any interference in the nervous system by balancing these biomagnetic imbalances. These imbalances show up as a named condition in the medical world, as an energy imbalance in the mind and body, healing disciplines, or as a subluxation in chiropractic. Once we balance these points on the body, homeostasis, or balancing of the body, returns. Therefore, pain goes away, range of motion increases, and named conditions improve. So, from what I can tell, BEST does not limit themselves and say we treat these things. Basically, as long as you balance these points, whatever's going on in the body will balance and get better. Now, with the MYK system, we don't go after everything. We do get phenomenal results with things like peripheral neuropathy. That is, if you have numbness, tingling, burning sensations anywhere. Headaches, acid reflux, incontinence, constipation, frozen shoulder, carpal tunnel, plantar fasciitis, problems associated with disc bulges or herniations. And that's just to name a few. But we don't say you can go after everything. And I'm not saying that they do, but I couldn't find that they limited it either. What does the practitioner do? They're going to lie the person prone or face down on the table. Then they're going to look at the leg lengths while lying down and also bending the knees to 90 degrees. So normal would look like this. The legs are both even when straight and bent. The muscle tone in the legs and along the spine is equal, and the whole body pulsations are synchronized in both rhythm and intensity. and there's no biomagnetic segmentation of north and south points. That's what normal would look like to them. All right, so you're lying on the table, and the practitioner will ask you to consciously relax all of your muscles. They'll feel the muscles along your spine and work out to larger muscle groups. You're classified as type A if you have tight muscles, which means an increase in a sympathetic response. The sympathetic response is the The sympathetic response is the fight or flight response that everyone has heard of. Fight or flight, like when you step off a curb and then jump back right before the bus hits you. Unlike that poor girl that got splattered in Final Destination, she went from like 0 to 50 in like 0.02 seconds. And when her friends realized what happened, they had a sympathetic response. Their hearts beat faster, their lungs opened up to take in more oxygen, their eyes dilated to see all the blood that was everywhere, their stomachs pushed blood away and pushed it into their arms and legs just in case they had to run. You know, that's the sympathetic response. Okay, so if you're deemed type A, which means you have too much sympathetic, they'll check your C2 spinous process, your lateral quad area, your upper trap area, and the sciatic notch, which is down on your hip. If they find any tenderness, they'll use the north-seeking fingers. Remember, we talked about north and south fingers. So we'll treat these points with north fingers. While you're on these points, they'll have you hold your breath so that you can feel the pulsations, and then they want to bring that into balance. There's actually a chart with boxes. Like if the legs are even, go down line A. They have line A and line B. Go down line A to the next box, and if they're not even, go down line B. And the second box in line A may say contact C2, and if it's tender, go to the next box in line A. If it's not tender, then go over to line B. And it keeps walking you through the protocol this way. When you look at the chart, it's not real difficult. It's not a real difficult technique to do. The main difficulty is in trying to explain it, because it really goes deep into these areas. Now, I actually enjoyed reading all this. I just struggled a little trying to bring it back into layman's terms. With the MYK system, we have a chart also. We have a posture chart. We also have a program you can use that walks you through the assessment, the treatment, and the strengthening exercises. I call it the MYK brain because it does all the thinking for you. So I can show you a demonstration on that. What professions do they normally teach? How much are the classes? How many CEUs do you get? All that. I couldn't find where they were approved to teach any professions for CEUs. You can still get certified as a practitioner, but it's all done by home study from what I could find. And it looks like it's about $500, $497 per class. With the MYK system, we're approved to teach the PTs, massage therapists, athletic trainers, most of the states for occupational therapy, chiropractic, and there's a few more. All right, so let's do a quick recap. How is it similar or different from the MYK system? So a similarity, BEST is a non-force technique, meaning they're not moving bones. And with the MYK system, we don't move bones either. A difference in the treatment is they will push on specific points to manipulate the body's energy and have the patient think about a stressful memory to rewire the brain. With the MYK system, we put a stimulation into every muscle along one nerve pathway or both sides of the body. And when the person stands up, the brain receives this information, and then the muscles that we never even touched will contract or relax based on this information, and the body will balance itself. So there's a difference in how we treat. Another difference is BEST talks about the energy work, the aura, having north and south pole energy in different fingers. And it appears, they say, as long as we can balance these points, the body will come back into balance, which will correct named conditions, energy imbalances, and subluxations. With the MYK system, we don't go after everything. I listed some conditions earlier that we get phenomenal results with. I'm the first person to say in class that the MYK system is not going to work 100% of the time. I always say in class, if somebody says that they can fix everything, run. Nothing out there is an end-all cure-all. If there were, there would be no need to have all the other professions and all the other techniques and all that kind of stuff. Another difference. I couldn't find that they offer CEUs for their classes. With the MYK system, we provide CEUs for the professions listed in the notes below. Now I'm going to say this. I've heard a lot of very, very good things about this technique, about the best technique. The patients that I have spoken with really couldn't explain what it was about, but I will say that almost every single one of them loved the treatment. That's the biggest positive right there. So I would like to try it out. I always get a little nervous when the emotional component is brought into the treatment. I've said, about some of the other techniques that bring the emotional component in. I may need this type of treatment and it may be hugely beneficial for me, but I'm not sure sitting here right now if I would like it. But maybe it's just what I need. So one day I'm going to try this technique because I really have heard some very, very good things about it. If you haven't done it yet, be sure and hit the subscribe or follow button. And if you made it this far, smile.